hope that you guys have been enjoying these forgotten Audible finds. Last one really was a good one, good major album, but this one is very significant because it really shifts the change of Christian music altogether. So this comes at a time when the sands are changing. 75, they start recording in another land, and Larry Norman is thinking that this is going to be an independent project, going to have no problems, but he's got to deal with publishers, and he has to deal with the distributing, which for the first time is Word, which becomes synonymous with Christian music. I mean, you cannot buy a Christian rock album. Was something where at the same time the Jesus movement is rising, the play Jesus Christ Superstar becomes the biggest play in the world, and Time magazine features Jesus on the cover of their magazine. It's a movement that is growing, and with that, ABC sees a marketing concept, so a marketing chance, and so they buy Word Distributing. And at this time, Larry Norman is recording in his Solid Rock recording studios this album, which becomes, he figures it's going to be all downhill now because I'll have control of everything. But that's not the way it works. It's like when you go in business for yourself, you learn you're still at the mercy of other people and your customers or whatever, and really makes a really good album. And like I said, we say that the second wave of Christian music comes around about 77, and the reason why we say that is because that's when the pivotal peak where Christian albums started doing 100,000 sales, which is gold record status. And this album was a quality studio, project, and it launches, Solid Rock Records, and it launches a new wave in Christian music altogether. It finally, like I said, the church has finally accepted him as a Christian artist through this album. But before then, he was a secular artist who was a Christian, and that was kind of a mainstream thing because a lot of the artists at the time were in the Jesus movement, including Cliff Richards, and we featured an artist earlier that we talked about. He was in this as well. But there's a lot of artists, that hadn't recorded yet that were still around. E-Band's around. All these bands are around. E Street Band's around. Dove is around. Artists like this, but they're not recording at the time. Resurrection Band's not recording really at the time, but they're around at the time. But this becomes a pivotal marketing thing, and people finally see that there is a market for church music, for music in the church, and that Bill Gaither wasn't the only one who can write music, which was surprising to a lot of people. That's, oh wow, other Christians can write modern Christian contemporary music. And the reasoning is behind that is because you've got a deal with a distributor and a publisher that says, oh, you're going to get here in the studio. Well, you want to sing CCM, Bill Gaither, there you go. And there's nothing against it. I like Bill Gaither, and that's what he's a lot of influence to what CCM is.
Yeah. I mean, if there was, Bill Gaither did pave some way.
Right.
And I mean, that was a good thing about it, because I mean,
Christian Pat Boone and a lot of things.
Yeah, because I mean, Norman, I don't think had any idea what he was getting into. Which, I mean, it wasn't like he was sitting there thinking about it anyway. He was just, I really feel like he was probably just called of God to do this. And so when you are called to God, you follow the Lord and just, do what you're supposed to do. And, and his life is, it's full of pitfalls and ups and downs, and, and this didn't work, and that didn't work, and in his life not really being who he really should have been, because people didn't really appreciate. And I've got nothing against the artists that are publishing now, but it's not, I don't think a lot of them understood how hard it was in these days. I mean, when he started, there were other people doing this, but he was the only one to do it the way that he did.
Well, I mean,
like you said, it was to go from the secular market into the Christian market. That's taboo.
Yeah.
I mean, that just. Well, and then he had a bad look, guys. I mean, see the hair? Is he a boy or a girl? I'm sure he got asked that a lot, especially, when this teenager brings home this record, and here's this guy with this long hair. Who is she? It's a guy. Why he got short hair? Because he grew it out long to make room for his brain. That's what
it amazes you because, we're, like I said, why is this a Christian nation? Well, because if you took a cookie jar and you put cookies in it, it's a cookie jar. What is it when you take cookies out? It's just a jar.
Right.
That's exactly the way this nation is. It's a Christian nation. And you go to work every day, guess what you're going to work with? You're going to work with Christians. Because this is a Christian nation. But it seems like when we get to our entertainment world and how dare you mix that with... Yeah. It's a job, folks. I mean, you go and you sell albums. Let me tell you, most of the time in the music industry, especially in the management, you're glorified used car salesman. 90% of the time, especially if you're doing hip hop nowadays, because you're just rehashing 80s tunes. Which is the biggest money thing right here. But we won't get into publishing. That's for another thing. But let's get on to this album. Now you got, first of all, we're going to explain this real quick. And don't get upset, guys, but he's in agreement. We're not really phonophiles. Okay, or what do you want? Is that phonograph files? So, number one, you're going to have to understand, this is a disclaimer, is we're listening to this in a remastered environment CD, which I cannot say of what it would felt like if I was in 1975 and hearing this for the first time. I don't know what it would be like on a mono or a stereophonic player. I mean, we're listening to this through a surround sound. We're listening to this through headphones. I've never heard the pops and hisses on this. Exactly. There's no pops and hisses.
No, this says no pops and hisses. And I was able to listen to it. I've been able to listen to it in my car. I've been able to put it on an MP3 player. I can listen to it everywhere. And like I said, if you're a phonophile, God bless you. But I just don't understand that. And when he understands this as well as I do.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, we were hoping and praying for something like this, and even more something like MP3s.
Yeah.
Because what we would do is we would like to take ours with us. My music goes with me. When I go on a walk, it's in my ears, and I love to do that. And he loves to do that. I mean, that's the way we love to listen to music. We don't understand putting in a phonograph record and sitting down and just being real still because you're afraid that you're going to scratch that record. Well, actually, I've done that, but I don't understand loving it. I mean, after I've been exposed to all these great things, I think we need to keep going forward. Well, if you're going to come up with a phonograph record, you make one that's impervious to scratches, and you can take it with you. And I might be on board with that.
Yeah, it's the whole thing is, and I respect artists as someone who records music myself, but I understand we live in an ADHD society, and you're not going to go out there and market music like it used to be. Yeah, you had kids with the headphones. You gotta understand too. Yeah, I can imagine. I did it back in the day, but I did it with cassettes. You listen to headphones and go to sleep, listen to music back in the days, and that's what they did. A lot of the kids did with the headphones, and a lot of those were mono. And I guess that's where you get your Pink Floyd, because you get the ambience, and everything like that. And now ambience is dead. Ambience is, as recording, as I can see, if this is as good quality as they did the phonograph, this is excellent done album. There are a few critiques about it that I do have, but I'll tell you what here. I believe Larry Norman spent more time on music on this than anything else. Agree? I believe the music is really thought out.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, this is part of a trilogy. This is the third of a trilogy,
right?
And by the time he's got to the third one, I'm sure it's he understands it.
Okay. Featured on this is John Michael Talbot is on banjo. Does 666 is one of the songs on here. John Michael Talbot does banjo. One thing that I thought was a good idea was Larry Norman kind of dropped in the background a guitar and hired John Lynn. John Lynn is an excellent guitarist, and you'll hear him on Shotdown when he says, "Go, Johnny!"
Well, Lynn stayed with him quite a few years, and Lynn's gone now. He's gone. Larry and him probably up in heaven now playing together.
Yeah.
He was with Larry on quite a few albums I have.
Well, I think it does two things. It gives us this more heavier blues sound.
Well, that's not uncommon for Norman.
Well, I mean, it's what I'm saying. I think this has some really heavy guitar in it. And what I mean is, like, you get
he called on. If you listen to the album, he called on all the music that he's probably ever heard and used it. I mean, there's nothing.
Let's go back in time. We're talking about
this is not a heavy metal album. It's not a. It's not a ballad album. It's everything. I mean, he used everything.
That's the whole thing. It's more about the lyrics.
There's one song on here that is reminiscent of the 20s.
Right. Well, I mean, you get Dudley Moore does a guest appearance on piano, John Michael Talbot on banjo, John Lynn, of course, Randy Stonehill version of a song. I don't know if Randy Stonehill did some guitar on this. I'm assuming he did, just didn't take any credit for it.
Well, it would be possible because at that time he would have been.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not talking about. He does some guitar and background vocals on this. But Larry Norman does pretty much almost everything from harmonies, guitar, percussion, and piano. My biggest criticism of this is I wish Larry Norman had invested more in background vocals. And I want to say his circle of friends, I mean, there's so much in music, from drums to guitar to bass, that are really well done. There's some instrumentals that are excellent from live orchestration. But as far as vocals, I wish he would have invested more into more background vocals. And the reason why I say that is he does a lot of harmony with himself, but he has only about 2 ranges. And one reason is we know about I Am a Servant was a Honey Tree hit. And it is obviously designed for someone with a higher than he is. And he is a very high pitch, which I am so glad that Larry Norman is, because this kind of music does not work with someone in a lower tone voice type.
Your majority of your rock and roll.
Well, I think that's the influence from Zeppelin. Yeah, that's
most of them higher because they want to.
You're like I said, you're battling against mid-range and bass.
Yeah.
So when you've got a lot of bass and mid-range guitar, which is what rock and roll pretty much is, you got to have a high voice to kind of.
I think one that really made any deeper vocals popular would be Bowen.
Yeah, and again, that's a different kind of music, and that's what happened. So you got to go back in '75 and think about who was probably the big artist at the time. I would say Eagles, I would say Elvis Presley was still making hits, and of course, I was going to Bruce Springsteen, the anti-Elvis, and Elvis for liberals.
No,
Okay,
I can't even call him that. I really can't.
he's not even.
I like maybe 2 songs that Bruce ever did, and that's about it.
And then, okay, but
it's just because.
So well, I mean, there was a change in rock and roll, but where we get the Eagles' influence on this is another version of "I Love You," and so Randy Stonehill came up with his own version, and it is more Eagle-esque. That's the idea. It's a Southern Pride version of "I Love You," because like the original "I Love You" goes back to like the late '60s things where you had the people, which were Larry Norman.
Well, actually, they didn't record first. They didn't record first.
Right.
I believe I could be wrong with this, but I believe the Animals did it first.
Okay. So these people do this song. Of course, it's written by.
It wasn't a hit for them, but it was a hit for people.
It was, and it is written by Larry and his guitar player. And basically, at the time, the true story about "I Love You" is people wasn't formed yet when they, and he was living with his dad, and at the time he said, "I think it's time for me to get on my own," and his dad said, "Well, I'd want to wait for you to graduate from college," and Larry Norman's response was, "I guess he doesn't know that I just dropped out of college." And so he gets with I believe Mason was his name, the Guitars for People, and they come up with "I Love You," and which is very popularized by.
They picked that song because somebody else had already done it.
Yeah,
but it was not a hit for them; it was a hit for people.
Yeah, exactly. And so they the guitar and all that stuff is from that '60s where they had a lot of organ and a lot of. I'm trying to think of an example. I want to say Partridge Family, but that's a horrible example.
No,
I'm trying to say.
It would probably be something like Animals. Let's see. I'm trying to think.
Herman and the Hermits, maybe. No,
they're a little lighter.
They're more guitar. This has got a little bit more. But anyways, this was the growing trend of the late '60s because the only group that stood out from that. I call them the Beatle rip-offs were, of course, Rolling Stones, because they were the ugly guys.
Yeah.
But which let's go back to which we can go to the Rolling Stones' influence in this, which because in fact the Rock That Doesn't Row is probably a little bit of about that. Let me put this about the Rolling Stones. If I was back in the day, yes, I would have been a Rolling Stones fan, and I know why, because they were the guys that were the anti, cookie cutter band when they first started out. And
I would be a Who fan.
Well, I would be a Who fan as well, but I can see the attraction to Rolling Stones and why they were such a pivotal music at the time. And like I said, the Rock That Doesn't Roll, things like that.
The Stones come in through the British fascination with American blues.
Yeah.
I had some early music of them when I was younger, and they had basically blues covers. Mm-hmm. They did stuff like Red Rooster, and it just, it was they loved our blues so much that that's what they wanted to do, and so they come in through that door. And and if you like that, I can understand. Me, I'm more progressive, so I like people that I loved it when the Beatles changed from the yeah to they come back and all of a sudden they're enlightened.
Well, I mean, obviously they didn't want to tour anymore and that kind of thing. So you gotta have that. You have a lot of Beatles influence on this, so there's a lot of flange going on with this, analog flange to try to capture that.
I mean, he recorded in the same studio that they did, so I mean, apparently he picked up a lot of that stuff.
Okay, let's talk about Andy Johns. Was the engineer for this, and he would later go on, and he's engineered for the Rolling Stones. So there's your little bit of Rolling Stones influence. And he also was pivotal in one heavy metal band that we know about, and that's Cinderella. He was he did engineer something. So yeah. So that's a little bit about Andy Johns. On that note, so we go by track by track. Any other technical thing you want to talk about on this album that you see?
I just want to, well, I do want to talk a little bit about the placement of this trilogy.
Okay.
So he actually did 3 albums.
Right.
And I have one of the other ones here. This is Only Visiting This Planet. If you like a more secular Larry Norman, I recommend that one. Also, if you like a lot of his big hits. I mean, this one has the Great American Novel, and it's got I Wish We'd All Been Ready, and it's got On the 6 O'Clock News, and they're full versions, whereas on here we have, some, what you would call a medley, which, it's not that that's a bad thing, because, you're kind of, it says, he calls it deja vu, but anyhow, getting back to that though, this one was, like he said, this is the one that got him in the record stores.
Onto the tracks, so we've got a little bit of what a setup of what you're getting into. The Rock That Doesn't Roll, and again, like I said, this is a very good way to start an album if you think about, because the idea, this is that Christians doing rock music, and there you go, Rock That Doesn't Roll. It stays in that theme what Larry Norman's supposed to be, and John Lynn does a great guitar solo in this. It's really good. And what does that opening when Rock That Doesn't Roll tell you when that you put that in there? What's the first thing it tells you?
It's a good intro.
Yeah.
The thing is though, this is not a full version though. That's what. I mean, that's the only beef I have on that. But it's an intro.
Again, that could be because of the edits, like we were talking about. There's several songs were edited to make it less time, and then also because there was a lot of controversial lyrics as well.
Well, I mean, another thing is,
like I said, we got to get it out into the Christian world.
That's another thing. Another thing about this. I mean, I could understand listening to this one on phonograph record because you don't have to skip around. It works very well from beginning to end. And that, to me, that's a well done album, and it's the same thing with this other one as well. I mean, when I listened to it a few weeks back, it works well. You don't have to sit there and go, I really don't want to hear that song.
And you guys got to understand, especially during this time, they went back to the old R&B type music during the 70s. And again, if you want to say, what about the time where Bruce Springsteen was doing this? Elvis Presley was still doing this. Another one who
it's never.
It's never Devonshire. All these people.
Blues has never gone
this R&B. It's like this R&B stuff.
Blues and R&B, they don't.
Right. Okay. The Southern vibe. We'll call this. This is what reason. We'll call this the Southern vibe. Were you doing a Rock That Doesn't Roll?
Sure.
Okay. The Southern fried version of "I Love You," which is a Rainy Stone Hill.
Well, this is a very melodic song. I mean, this album flows very well. It just does.
But I think, like I said, my opinion is because at that time, Southern Fried, Leonard Skinner, and all this stuff was getting big, and they kind of made it a little bit more. Randy Stonehill is just, to me, one of the best melody guitar players. He's classically trained, and eventually, I hope we get to do some of his stuff. Yeah, eventually, because about that. But yeah, I Love You. Do you like this version better than the People's version, or do you like the People's version better?
Well, I have to say I like this one better because, well, I mean, and I got nothing against it. I mean, just bottom line is which one have I listened to more?
Yeah,
this one, because I mean, I got the song, but I don't sit there and go, man, I really want to listen to People's "I Love You." No, I say I want to listen to this whole album. I mean, that's what's good about this. I mean, I don't sit here and go, man, I really want to listen. No, if I listen to this one song, I'm going to listen to the whole album. It's just that way.
And I kind of myself on this. I like them both. I just think it's just they were just trying to modern up a little bit to change the times. Yeah, because I mean the people's version was obviously the very 60s as.
Yeah, and it wouldn't fit well on this album either.
No,
I mean it's again it would be considered it's a secular tune. He's talking about his girlfriend. Okay, which I don't think he was doing there either. But anyhow, and then we go back to UFO.
UFO, very, very ingenious way. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know if he's making this sound through a comb or something to give this kind of a unique little, sound whistling type thing effect that you would use, and it gives us like your imagined UFO hovering. At the time, I've noticed with a lot of the artists, whether it was music artists, even before. Very few people were fans of 2001 Space Odyssey, but it did influence enough people musically. Your music people loved the film. I mean, from David Bowie to Larry Norman probably, and all these other.
It was the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, today, we write songs about zombies.
Right.
In this day, UFO was a big deal.
Right.
And he wanted to just put his 2 cents on what he thought about UFOs.
Did you feel that this wasn't okay? I'm sorry about that. That's not what I meant. Because obviously, if you look at the cover here, this is a painting of Jerusalem, and the reason why they did that at the time there was so much conflict that he couldn't have an actual photograph.
Right.
But so this is but it is a futuristic thing, and I forget another thing is your top seller on the list right now in books. Books have very influenced music. Is Tim LaHaye.
Right.
So UFO and things like this are very Tim LaHaye influenced. I've searched all around. I like this song. I really do. It's probably, to me, is the most catchiest song on here. Whereas the rest of these are a little bit harder songs because they're all lyrically. This is catchy, and I like it. I really do. Because once you listen to I've Searched All Around, you start singing. Mm-hmm. So it's a very catchy song. I love it. Here's the thing is about reason I like this album. Here's my biggest problem. My biggest criticism about modern music versus the music of the 70s is there wasn't so much focus on drums. There was more focus on music and not taking anything away but drums. But my gosh, I mean, how can you sit there and always just live that 1, 2, 3? No, it's like when you get good tunes like I've Searched Around, you can sit back and enjoy a good tune like this. And even though it's a very simplistic gospel song, it is so catchy.
Yeah, I agree. That's if I had a favorite, that would be one of my favorites on this.
It's one of those, to me, I'm surprised it's not like sung at youth choirs or something like that because it's such a great tune.
Well, I think the words are a bit quirky.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's the reason why I like it, because I could see a youth choir doing it.
Open the mouth of love, and I found the wisdom tree.
Right, exactly. and that gets you laughing, and you think about. I think I could see like a youth choir doing something like this, and I wonder why there wasn't more. Because I like what Ralph Carmichael and Kurt Kaiser had the whole thing on the youth choirs at that time, and this would be something I could see injected into that. The Owens are a good example of all that.
That's Jamie Owens.
The
Collins.
Okay, this is another version of Righteous Rocker. It just kind of feels like a fill-in. It really does. It's not really the.
Even though that's not in part of Deja Vu, it's part of those 3 songs that. I mean, that's kind of weird. He puts Righteous Rocker in there, but doesn't put it into Deja Vu because it's really part of the, but I tell you what, this one, if you really want to hear somebody really cover this song really good, I think Audio is really
they do
really good.
But they get that. They
of course, I recommend. I can't always recommend tribute albums. And of course, I think at the time the tribute album, I think it was a good thing that album was done.
then.
So
and not
basically,
now.
Righteous
I mean,
Rocker 3 is more like an intro to you.
Yeah, it's the intro deja vu, which is.
And I think the
It's
way
too,
he just
short
probably might have been messing around. They said, "Hey, that sounded good. Let's put that on there."
Yeah.
Deja vu, and then they say it's sort of a medley into Why Don't You Look Into Jesus. But I want to do them separately. Deja Vu is a song I have fallen in love with a lot of times because of ETW's cover of this song. It is a very R&B song. And I would, right, I mean, you could put it up there with Al Green or any other R&B artist at the time.
The whole song is called Deja Vu.
Yeah.
Because it's deja vuing if God is and looking at Jesus.
Well, I mean, we'll get into that.
Okay.
But let's split the song in half.
Okay, go ahead. Well, I mean, you can use the two.
Right.
components.
I mean, there about the comparison because, but if God is my Father, Deja Vu has this R&B feel. It gets this Al Green thing going.
Right.
I mean, when you listen to it, what do you hear?
That's I heard the ETW version first, and so I immediately think of that because, of course, you get the whole song again with that. And like I said, I'm not knocking that he used because the album it's the whole album.
I would like to do If God Is My Father. Michael Tate, an R&B version would be awesome to do this song because he does such good art. What happened? Kevin Max would probably do this as well, really good because he does that.
But
R&B.
then he'd have to change the background.
Brian Duncan would be another one that would do this.
I would love Brian Duncan.
He does Bob Carlisle. We mentioned her.
Bob's got some.
So I mean, it's one of those, like I said, when you listen to this because you've heard this song so many times, and you listen to it again, you're like, wow, you really appreciate this song a little bit more. Why Don't You Look Into Jesus? This is the G-rated version of the song.
Right.
It's edited, but it's still good. And like I said, I told you, like I was talking about, they get really heavy on the guitars on Why Don't You Look Into Jesus? It's supposed to be his blues.
This one has the full version on it.
Yeah, if you want to hear the full version, the unedited version, go back to this one.
You would automatically know why it's edited. Because I mean, there's some things that Larry was just honest. That's what I liked about Larry. And then that's part of what I miss about Christian. So I mean, let's go back to the thing. And I can't probably say enough about I'm a Servant. I mean, if somebody said, okay, here's this album, pick any song on this album that you would want to cover, I would say I'm a Servant. Because the song is so personal. And I mean, whether anybody else has done it, anybody else has written it, whatever, it just, to me, it really fit Larry.
Yeah, it's good lyrically, but his version is not my favorite of this version, and because so many people have recorded it. And that was one because I'm Honey Tree.
Oh, you were better. So I've not even heard Honey Tree.
I mean things like, because the range of the vocals. Yeah. This is where, he does some great vocals on Why Don't You Look Into Jesus, going back to the heavy guitar and everything like that. And that's where his range is really great. I Am Servant doesn't really, to me, it's not in his range.
Well, that's what I like about it.
Yeah. And
I mean, I think part of that adds to it because it's almost like a struggle.
Yeah. And this is another thing, too. I believe this is where Camp eventually started changing his format about this time after this album. Because this album probably had a lot of heavily influenced where Steve Camp went to from then on. Because we'll get into this later. But, because you get two sides of this. I mean, at the same time, even though, he was coming up was Keith Green, but I think two of the most influential people to CCM was this guy, of course, at this time this album came out, and then when Keith Green's 77 album came out. Right. And those albums really just, this is where it's going to be. This is where people are going to go with this music.
I think that was the thing about Green, though.
Yeah.
Green had such an incredible talent that he was an overnight success.
And that's the whole
This man
thing with
was not.
Camp.
He
Steve
was-
Camp, if you
and I'm
want-
not saying
if
he's
you-
worse than Keith Green.
Of course, I'm a
just saying.
Steve Camp person, and if you want to know the history of Camp, you gotta listen to this album, you gotta listen to some Keith Green, and you put them two together, and you got Steve Camp, because that's where he wanted to go, is kind of a more mixture of those two together, and because it's just boom with that. Of course, the sun began to rain is the Dudley Moore piece. They shot it in about an hour and got it out in an hour and a minute. They said
Sounds like something from the 20s.
but it was here's the whole thing about this album, about this song though. It's something that Larry Norman loved doing so much that he did it regularly on his albums, which is kind of a tribute to those songs of the past. And I think that's because his dad liked that kind of music, and so he's done a few songs like that. Shot Down to me is first time I ever heard it. It was one of my favorite songs, but and this is before the controversy of his later life. I mean, even at this time they questioned a lot of things, and this was, but he was so appreciated in England more than he was in America.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
It's a different climate there.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean that's what. I mean I'm not saying that it wasn't hard for you two to get where they are, but to be a British artist, to do what they've done and come out that they are Christian or Christian influence is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because over here we have problems with it.
Right.
And I mean we've come a long way.
Well, I'd like to say we
but-
challenge people more. And I think sometimes we got to remember it's not just about the music. But like I said, if we would separate two, though, it's the same thing with our jobs. Every day in our job, you know, we're faced with those decisions. And this is a job to a lot of these guys. This is how they eat. They're not making buku's amount of money. I mean, they make about as much money as a middle class person does, whereas you got the secular artists are making billions for ripping off a one-hit wonder and putting cuss words over it. That's disgusting. I mean, these guys were just trying to feed their kids and at the same time trying to not to compromise their belief. And it's the same thing with you. When you get up in the morning and you go to work every day, you got to deal with the boss who's wanting you to lie, or deal with the boss who's wanting you to do this and this. It's the same thing these guys are dealing with. And to sit there and give them a hard time, well, if you're going to do today with the blah, 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 well, tell that salesman not to wear a plaid suit. Because it's the same thing. He's got to get out there and keep his faith and still do everything in the world to get you to buy that car. And the same thing with these guys. These guys trying to get you to buy the album. And you can't get kids to buy an album if you're going to, you know, I mean, I don't consider it selling out as long as the lyrics stay the same and the message stays the same.
That's what I'm saying. It was a fine line that they were walking, and some of them were. This man, I do not think, was as afraid to walk the line as some of the others, because he's the pioneer.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say, well, there's other people that did Elvis, da 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 da. Yeah, they did, yeah, they did, but. Here's the difference between Larry and why he deserves. This is why he deserves the father of Christian rock and roll. That's why he deserves a title. Is because he was willing to do what others weren't going to do. And I mean that is it's he hobnobbed with the secular artist. I mean we'll get to that in a minute. He hobnobbed with them, and then he could come around here and be with the Christian artists, and it was a fellowship, a good fellowship there. But they knew that he knew this guy over here. Like I say, he is Dudley Moore. You don't get Dudley Moore on there because, well, hey Dudley, would you? No, he did. He knew Dudley. You have to know these people, and that's part of it. And if he knew if he's going to get in this, like I said, to go through the secular industry to come out bringing people to Jesus. That's how he had to do it.
And you
and
gotta
it's a
understand,
dirty, filthy job at times. I
yeah,
mean,
and
I'm
you
sure
gotta
there's things
understand
he
too
saw
is
and
the
heard
Jesus
and
movement
knew that.
was very large.
Right.
And the only people that really rejected the influence of the Jesus movement, it was American television. I mean, at the same time, you get, they're doing their network, but all the media is printing what this movement is doing. They're printing about these kids going out there handing out tracts on college campuses. The media is printing that. The local news is on. The only one that didn't want to tell you about it was the situation comedies and all this kind of thing at the time. They wanted to keep that a secret, but it obviously was influential entire world in the 70s because it's unbelievable. And so at the same time, you've got entertainers that are becoming Christian, that are going to church and doing things like this. I remember even Donny Osmond was talking about how it was influencing his life when he was younger. And I know he's a Mormon, but that's the truth. It really... Here's the thing is, you guys got to understand, it wasn't like it is now. I mean, if the Jesus movement was on the internet nowadays, you wouldn't believe how YouTube would be because we would have full control. The only thing we couldn't control was the media because the media was trying to suppress it so bad. But the colleges, it just outrageous. The Hollywood, everybody was getting influenced by this movement. We're talking about the best-selling play had to do something with Jesus. They had to make movies about Jesus. They had to do all these things because it was not just marketable. It's what people wanted to talk about. Yeah. It was such a big important part of the culture at the time. So this is the reason.
I think that it's really not...
comic books, everything.
Yeah, it's really not that different, except for the fact, like you said, the media stands in the way.
Right.
And because we get an idea of what, and I mean...
We get Shot Down, and then we get 666 there. This is a very significant song, and you talk a little bit about that if you want to. This was covered by other artists as well, this song. It was covered by, I'll get it out here. Frank Black on his album Frank Black and the Catholics.
Okay.
And the song, I believe this is where you get John Michael Talbot on banjo. Okay, now you understand, I love John Michael Talbot. He's Catholic, and he's one of these that had got influenced through the Jesus movement.
He just started out as
Terry and Michael.
I think he just started out as a hippie convert.
Yeah. But, these guys searched and did their... Yeah. But you get a lot of connection between Michael Card, John Michael Talbot, and those guys. And this is, guys, if you want to talk about praise music, Talbot, Card, so phooey on these modern people. I'm sorry, but when you take a psalm like Talbot and Card does and make it into music, that's what praise music is about. And I enjoy the music, and of course I'm a white person. Yes, I like it because I'm white, okay? You people that have a little soul can't stand Michael Talbot, will phooey on you, it's like, you keep your repetition and, whatever. But, as far as when you get to Michael Card, you get El Shaddai, which is Michael Card. And but Michael Talbot, Michael Card, John Michael Talbot, Phil Keaggy, all these guys, Rich Mullins, bam, Franciscans, very good guys that know how to write praise music. And so that's what
that's what I like about the Franciscans.
Right.
Here's what you may not understand about a Franciscan.
Yeah.
They can get married. So Talbot has a wife.
Yeah.
And which is, it's just like you're sitting here going, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Which I don't want to get into all that. I really don't want to bash Catholics, because there are other Catholics out there really doing, preaching the gospel, and that's good. And I can't.
Well, Franciscans
and this John,
the ones. These guys really sacrifice a lot.
Yeah,
to do what they do. They're a little bit more. Go a little bit more further. But if you want to get, I mean, 666, of course, is, like I said, our Tim LaHaye influence kind of thing.
Right.
A lot of the dispensationalism was coming in there, and with his popularity of his books. So it was obviously that this was going to happen.
But he was. It's a bit unique how he brings in the 666.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think of it, it's on a man tattooed on a man's head or his hand or something. You're gonna know him. You're gonna see. No, come on. He makes it the song in a hymn book.
Yeah.
And in a way, he's kind of taking a little bit of a jab at the church.
Yeah. Because of that, you know, and the climate at that time, to understand. I mean, like I said, you know, I was, you know, joking about the hair and everything. It was a big deal. Yeah.
And I mean, you know, to the point that I think I grew up thinking the 11th commandment is you should have your hair in a crew cut. And basically that was, you know, that was the climate he was living in. And I think, you know, rather than just be negative about the church, especially on a Christian album, he just took a little jab at it and said, you know what, you're probably singing a song that is ushering in the Antichrist. Yeah. Or you're doing things in your church that's ushering in the Antichrist, and you don't know it because you're so wrapped up in who you are and forget about what the gospel is supposed to mean. And so it's just, you know, I think it's a bit of a jab, just a little jab there. You want to talk about diamonds first there?
Oh, diamonds. Okay. Like I said, this is where you get your influence of into Steve Camp. And Camp recorded Diamonds, and he did it as a medley for another song. With another song, he just combined Diamonds with I can't remember the other song that he did. You can take it down. But Diamonds is a great song. I would not probably liked it as much if Camp did not do it, and I did not hear his version first. I like Camp's version better, obviously. Camp is just a better piano player, and he can add his little flavor to it. He's a better vocalist. And on something like this, when it comes to ballads, that's not Larry Norman's strong suit. I think when it comes to ballads, he's like Bob Dylan. Nobody really wants to hear Bob Dylan doing the ballads.
Well, you can understand it.
And I'm not saying it's like his range is a little bit different.
Well, he's very soaked. I mean, you talk about being a white guy that doesn't understand R&B and blues. Yeah. This man did understand that.
Right.
And there's his whole career is got that influence in there. The blues runs through his career.
Yeah.
And so when you hear his music, for him to put the blues in something, it's not a strange thing at all. There's some that just they can't pull off the blues because they just really don't understand. And I think
I think that's one strong suit about Larry Norman is because it's if you want to get into your Zeppelin-esque type thing, Larry Norman can do that. He can knock it out of the park. And I think maybe that's the reason why Michael Rowe kind of embraces more of Larry Norman style and that kind of thing.
I think part of what the blues is that that makes it hard for some people to understand is that you have to have enough tragedy in your life and have come to the other side of it. I mean, there's some people that do the blues and they've never come to the other side of the blues, and I really don't think that's giving it justice.
Yeah.
You have to blues is I believe a way of, I mean, when it was created, it was a way of dealing with tragedy. I mean, and instead of being, whiny and crying about it, they would say, well, this is what's happening, but I don't care. You know, and that was kind of, you know, I made this song, and you know what? You bought it. And if they can do that, you know what? They feel a whole lot better about themselves because they've done something worthwhile.
There's energy put into it.
Yeah, well,
and that's something like, you know, like I'm learning later because I didn't think about it. You know, when I did this last project and about how that singing is a lot like acting. Is you have to act like you have the energy there, and that's what, like I said, with the blues, and you get a hard time, and you can't get out there in the real world. You have to keep your mouth shut. But when you go home and you pick up that guitar and those things, all that emotion comes out in a blues song, from Robert Johnson to any of those things. I mean, that's influenced a lot of your Glenn Kaiser.
We had Blind Willie Johnson.
Yeah.
If he was a great gospel blues musician. You know,
a lot of these artists.
Yeah, when Zeppelin added when Zeppelin added the heavy part to it, I mean, it changed it because, you wouldn't have it. Right, it's still blues, and exactly, and that's what Larry Norman takes it into. And
whether it's hard or a down, 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 and whether it's that, I mean, you know, it's we can almost be country.
Dominant, and it goes straight into one way, and but the idea is obviously Larry Norman started a media stir. I want to say in Europe, people started asking the question that if he had been a founder of the Jesus movement, and I think in his honesty, what he says, he's rejected that notion. There is belief that he created the one-way symbol and he came up with it and all this kind of thing. There's some people say it was done by accident. I don't know. I don't care. The bottom line is one way, I think, sets aside what the problem was with the Jesus movement was coming into. I think people like Lonnie Frisbee and people like that wanted to search for more, so they go out and keep on searching until they find something else. One way was to separate the Christianity from the Jesus movement. Is basically that there's one way to get to God. The problem with a lot of people in the Jesus movement, they were getting to the point where they were going other directions. And I think one thing you say about Norman has always stated, and a lot of people think this is not very controversial because it's a Christian, but no, it is.
Yes.
Even we're finding today is that people think that that Jesus is equal to Muhammad or Buddha. So basically one way is that set apart to say this is a Christian album, this isn't just a Jesus album. Okay, I mean, which is different. There's a difference. So with that, and that is a very important song. I love these songs. Diamonds in One Way are very good. Yeah. And I like the way, and again, I'm not going back on the ballad stuff. I like the way he does these songs. I love the music. But, Camp really knocks it out in his version. And and that's where I fell in love with the song, was from Steve Camp doing it first. And he's one of those. Steve Camp has done some really great covers of Keith Green's and Larry Norman songs. And if Camp decided to do an album just doing Larry Norman covers or Keith Green covers, I would buy it, because he does. There's a couple of versions of Keith Green's that I don't like. But because Camp is a great piano player, if he stays in the piano thing, I like that part about it. Of course, he's a pastor now in Florida, doesn't record hardly anymore. I don't think he records at all anymore. But
actually, though, I did see him involved in there's some kind of thing I saw where all these classic artists are getting together.
Okay, well, yeah, good.
So I don't know. He might do a couple songs and preach. I don't know, but
right. And music is not just the main thing into him anymore. And he's one of those guys that have really grown in Christ, and he really has. He sees the bigger thing with it. Song for a Small Circle of Friends. Now, a lot of controversy about this because a lot of people say, well, Norman didn't work with these people directly, but if you look at the album, the people that worked with him did work with them directly. So if you took Andy Johns, who does the engineering of this album, and he worked with these people. So to say that Norman might not work directly with these people, but the point is there was some sort of connection, because Andy Johns is a good example of the connection between these. And in fact, if they wanted to interview Andy Johns and say, what's the connection between Small Circle of Friends? But I think it's a bigger picture than a lot of people think. They think that that is just Larry Norman working with these artists all together and everything. No, I think it's more of that at this time, Clapton was coming in the Jesus movement. Paul McCartney was, did a lot of Christian things as well. Because this was a big movement, and this affected a lot of people. Eric Clapton still today has an expressing faith in Christ. Bob Dylan still expresses his faith in Christ.
He did. There's some songs that Clapton did in the '90s that, to be honest, they just they should be it's something you listen to as a Christian.
Yeah, Dylan's Christian album is very important. Three Christian albums. And still,
for 3 albums.
Still.
And I don't know. I just, to be honest with you, if you listen to those albums, I can't believe he's not.
Yeah.
But I don't. He's gone. He works as a Jewish artist now, and it's I want to say hedonistic, which I don't know. That doesn't sound right, because that means he's. Anyhow. Okay. Anyways, he's some kind of Jewish guy, and they really
he's in that Jewish Talmud.
Well, it's a
Jewish witchcraft thing like Madonna is.
No, I don't think he's not a Kabbalist. He's more like it has something to do with the way that he looks at women. Anyway,
I always think of Reverend Lovejoy from Simpsons. He says she's into Kabbalah. Well, isn't that special? So, Song for a Small Circle of Friends. That's my opinion on that.
I want to say a little something about that. I think, like I said, what like you were saying, I think the song is more about kind of talking about those people, like you said, that were interested.
Right.
And there's Clapton's done some stuff that's
because if you look at Diamonds in One Way, exactly. If you look at Diamonds in One Way,
and of course he the media, Stonehill in this.
The media is sitting there talking about. The media is talking about, he's being an oddball. Like, you crazy person. Because he's not accepted by the church. He's not accepted by the mainstream secular market. So he's an oddball. And if you don't want to believe me that he has little problems with what the media is, watch him and Cliff Richards together. Now, here's the thing, too, is Cliff did record some songs by Larry Norman. And it's very important that you know about their relationship, because, let's put it this way, 1971... this guy was in Cliff Richards' garden singing one of his songs. Cliff loved Larry, and Cliff admired Larry a lot. And I think that's one thing.
Well, that probably made it easier for Cliff to talk more about his faith.
No. And you look at what Cliff does. Cliff is one of the biggest things about Greenbelt. Cliff, it puts Greenbelt together. He helps Greenbelt get going. But
let me go further than that. Let me go further with that with Cliff. Okay.
I'm surprised he didn't mention Cliff on the Circle of Friends.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why I'm saying this. What I personally think what Small Circle of Friends is talking about, he's talking about these people being saved and in heaven playing together. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Because if it was directly about people he's working with, why isn't Cliff Richards in there? Why isn't he talking about Dudley Moore and people like that? No, he's talking about these people that could be on the same wavelength as Randy Stonehill and be saved in heaven. That's what I see it as. Do you see that?
Yeah, but then Cliff would be there, because Cliff's
I understand what
openly
you're saying, but I'm talking about. I think it's to show people like the argument that one way is a tough song to do.
Like I said, I just think it's about, it's about those people that at the time that were what you would call seekers.
Yeah.
And some of them would come over to the other side, and some of them really did never get there. Or some of them may have gotten there. I don't know. I don't know all the things.
And that's
that's what he was looking at. And maybe it was the people. Maybe it was the people he's praying for at the time.
Right, exactly. And that's what I'm trying to say. I think he envisioned them in heaven to play together.
Yeah.
And like I said,
maybe that was his ideal Christian man. I don't know.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Because Cliff was hopeless.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let me get back. Let me get to Cliff here real quick here.
Okay.
Because some people think of Cliff as this minor. Oh yeah, hitter dude. And that's what a lot of people in America don't understand how big Cliff is.
Right.
I'm going to go out here.
I'm
and
sorry,
say this.
sir.
Yeah,
Cliff Richard.
Let's go before the sir, man. Let's go before the sir. The sir doesn't even matter in this.
Right.
Because whether he's a sir or not in front of his name, here's how big Cliff is in England. We say Elvis in this country, we know who Elvis is. They say Cliff, they don't say Cliff who. If you say Cliff in this country, Cliff who. They would say, oh, Sir Cliff Richard. He's that big. He is their Elvis. He's done movies.
Except for they did get bloated and die on drugs.
Yeah, he's done movies. He's duetted with anybody he wants to duet with. He's on and on. He's done whatever they'll let him do. He can do because he's Cliff Richard, and that's what they understand. We don't understand that because let's see, he did Devil Woman. Okay, that's the only song we know. No. He did many albums and many songs that people understand as being, that's Cliff Richard. He's like I said, as big as album.
The other song that is tied into Diamonds on the Steve Camp medley, if you want to check out, is Strange Love, Strange Peace, and Diamonds. So those come together, and that's the reason why I love that song. But then you get to Hymn to the Last Generation, which is a great outro to the album.
Yeah, I mean that's if you bought the original record, that would be it. That's it. Okay. And like I said, it's a good album to just sit there and when you start with the Rock Does It Roll and you end with Hymn to the Last Generation. And you can sit, I mean I could see listening to this one as a phonograph. Except for the fact that I still like it without the pops and hisses. But I could see doing that because you could actually sit there and but to be able to take this and put it in your CD player or whatever it is and say, well, you know what, I want to listen to Shotdown. You can do it. Or you can do random. It does random. Okay. Now, CD though, however, I got a little bargain because I got bonus tracks.
You got
do we want to
tracks.
talk about bonus tracks?
If you want to.
Okay, let's talk a little bit of bonus tracks real quick here.
I'm not going to say that. I don't know anything about them. But.
Okay, all right. Well, of the songs on here, you can take, looking for the footprints. Of course, we all know the famous footprints, photo where, or the painting where, the guy had painted these footprints. And why are there no footprints here? Well, it's because at that time Christ was carrying it. And that's what it's talking about here. It's just looking for the footprints. And it's looking for those times when Christ carried you or when, you didn't realize he was doing stuff. And, of course, like I said, it was a good addition to this. I mean, as far as goes as the Christian market, they would love that. And then he mentioned a minute ago, Strong House Track Piece, which Camp did. And I may have made a mistake. I don't think he did Iron Servant. He did this one.
Right. He did Strong Toad.
Yeah.
And Strange
And it was, and again, I heard it first.
Yeah.
But I love Larry's version of this. It's very
Which one's that?
the Strong Love Strange.
Yes.
And then Dreams on a Gray Afternoon. I was actually, back when I used to play with the cassette player, I actually used to take Dreams of a Gray Afternoon, and the sun began to rain, and the other one there was another song, and you could marry them together, and it made a wonderful, wonderful song. I did that one time. It was really cool. But yeah, it's a Dream on a Gray. It's very dreamy.
I mean, it's a song that you almost would use in a movie as a dream sequence.
I just got that very. And then, of course, Let the Tape Keep Rolling is just a live version of the song, of a song done in Greenbelt, so it's a good filler. And but even though it's a good filler, it's not a bad song. It's a good song, and it kind of lets people understand Larry Norman wasn't the only member of his family that was doing this.
Yeah, Charlie
is his
younger brother,
and talk about.
And Charlie has become a prominent studio musician and travels around the world and plays for a lot of bands.
But he often goes by the name of Charlie Normal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I found that out, which, I don't know if he is trying not to ride on the coattails of his brother or what, but he sometimes... And I've actually... you bought a compilation years ago of Larry's stuff, and it had these two songs on there. And I knew as sure as I'm sitting out here, they were not Larry Norman singing.
Yeah, they were Charlie singing.
And they were Charlie singing. And the thing is, these songs are very hard to find.
Yeah.
But as far as they're secular songs. They're just very secular songs. But they're songs that I enjoy because I guess the music was so well done, and then Charlie's vocals were very good on that. And I just loved them. They were very 80ish, which anything 80ish, I consider myself to be kind of a new wave.
I mean, he's definitely a technical guy, a good musician, and would be a person that people would love to work with because he's very, very talented. So, all right, I want to say something about Let the Tape Keep Rolling. I love that song, and it is, like I said, it's a Greenbelt live. Like I said, Cliff Richard and them usually put that together every year, and because he has the money.
Why don't you talk a little bit about Greenbelt?
Greenbelt. I don't know much about Greenbelt.
No, I'll tell you a little bit about it.
We talked about before. It's obviously a bigger festival than Cornerstone.
Yes,
it is the main. It is the and Greenbelt is a European festival in England that combines Christian musicians all over the world, and even if you're in secular, if you have a Christian background, whatever, they invite you to concert and you play, and there's how many venues it's just unreal.
Well, I mean, you'd be surprised.
Right.
Well, Bono shows up there quite often.
And people most of the time, especially if you're in the Christian world, you'll go to Greenbelt, you'll say, oh, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so Mike and Mechanics, people like that were big there.
The Proclaimers.
Did. But anyways, as far as I want to talk about that song, really, I love that song, and the reason is because I really, as someone who's got to record a little bit and being a recording engineer, I love what that's talking about. Of course, this is during the analog days where you had the tape rolling, and you had a master tape, and so instead
was that so that he just wanted to fill the tape? Is that what he's saying?
Well, we're still going, so let's keep the tape rolling.
Yeah.
And you can imagine you have three positions. You have your assistant engineer, and producer, most of the time, and they sit at the table. And a lot of times we'll have you re-record, re-edit, do a lot of type things. But like I said, you got a limit on tapes. And so you have a master tape, and it sits about like this, and it rolls. And of course, you're filtering through a track, through a bus, and that buses out into this 2 to 8 track system. And so, he's telling the engineer, we're still going with the musician, and I understand where that comes from, and I love that part. I remember a guy used to tell a story about. He said when you listen to someone and you say you don't get that part right, and you tell them you have to do it over again, is the most frustrating thing in the world. And it's so different with the digital age, because you should see how much cleanup I did on this last album to get timing correct, to get vocals changed, pitches. I mean, this stuff was unheard of in these days. And it was just, sometimes these guys were so good together. A good album, if you want to get a good feel of that, is Phil Keaggy and Rick Kua and Lynn Nichols and all these guys get together and record this album that they did together. And that's exactly what that feeling is.
Well, you could also go with I'm trying to think of that song that Keaggy did where he went backward.
So, all right. Well, I think that's pretty much sums that up. You guys leave us a comment in the section of other albums that you think we need to do.
Or you've heard about it.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about branching off and
doing
doing my own, because I've enjoyed doing the research on this. He's enjoyed doing the research on this as well. There's a lot to learn. So you guys have a great day, and comment below, like the videos, and share them.